This was the greatest love story ever told on American television. A fairy tale wedding watched by over 30 million people. America's sweethearts, Luke and Laura. Except, it was all built on a horrifying lie. A lie that started with a violent assault that network executives, in their infinite wisdom, decided to rebrand as romance. And at the center of it all was a 17-year-old girl, trapped, terrified, and forced to smile for the cameras while her real life was crumbling into a lonely, desperate hell. You think you know the story of Genie Francis, the beloved face of Laura Spencer? You don't know the half of it. This isn't a fairy tale. This is the story of how Hollywood built a princess, broke her spirit, and then mocked her for not being perfect anymore. Music shifts slightly, becoming more of a storytelling rhythm. Hey everyone, what is up and welcome to the channel. If you're into diving headfirst into the stories that Hollywood definitely doesn't want you to hear, then you are in exactly the right place. Go ahead and obliterate that subscribe button and turn on notifications, because today we are pulling back the curtain on one of the most iconic and frankly one of the most disturbing stories in television history. So, let's set the scene. It's the late 1970s. Genie Francis is just a kid. Born in New Jersey, daughter of an actor, she's basically grown up in the wings of theaters, seeing the magic of showbiz from the cheap seats. She's not some polished Hollywood prodigy, she's just a normal girl living between school and her dad's work. Then, at 14, she gets a small part. A year later, bam, she's cast as Laura Weber on a little show called General Hospital. She's 15, still in high school. No formal acting training, no media coaching, no clue what's about to hit her. Hollywood didn't ease her in. It didn't ask if she was ready. It just shoved her into the deep end of the shark tank and yelled, "Swim." Initially, Laura was nobody special. A supporting role, a background character. But then something wild happened. Audiences started connecting with her. They saw something real, something vulnerable in this teenage actress who was basically learning on the job. The producers saw the ratings, they saw the dollar signs in their eyes, and they decided to lean into it. And that's when things took a nosedive into Crazy Town. In 1979, the writers, looking for a shocking twist, penned a storyline where the bad boy character, Luke Spencer, assaults Laura. It was brutal, it was traumatic, and it should have been a story about a young woman's pain and recovery. But this is Hollywood, baby. Why deal with messy things like trauma when you can just, pretend it was the start of a passionate romance? I am not kidding. The network, in a move that would get them absolutely canceled into oblivion today, rewrote history. They framed the assault as the foundation of a sweeping love story, and America ate it up. Millions of people, 30 million people, were cheering for Luke and Laura, this epic couple. But let's get real for a second. Genie was just 17 years old, a teenager, forced to act out a scene where she looks back with romantic longing at the man who had just attacked her character. Can you imagine the psychological pretzel she had to twist herself into? She felt lost. She felt powerless. But she was a kid in a world of powerful adults. She was too young and too intimidated to say no. You just did what you were told. So she smiled, she acted, and she played the part of the girl in love with her abuser, while inside, the real Genie was starting to disappear. And the machine was just getting started. Suddenly, she wasn't a person anymore. She was public property. Every single detail of her life became a topic for public debate. Tabloids commented on her looks, her personality, and, the great Hollywood sin, her weight. She was a child, a literal child, being dissected by millions of strangers. Then came 1981, the wedding of the century. It was the most watched episode in the history of daytime television. More people tuned in to see Luke and Laura get married than watched the actual royal wedding of Prince Charles and Lady Diana that same year. Let that sink in. To America, it was the ultimate fairy tale ending. For Genie, it was the final nail in the coffin of her own identity. The world no longer saw Genie Francis, the actress. They saw Laura Spencer, America's sweetheart, a perfect, eternally young bride frozen in time. The pressure was immense. It was suffocating. So, in 1982, she did what anyone would do. She ran. She left General Hospital hoping to escape Laura's shadow, to prove she was more than just one character. She starred in shows like Bare Essence and the epic miniseries North and South. She was talented, she was working, but it didn't matter. To the media, to the public, she was still just Laura. Producers knew it, and they used her. They treated her not as an artist, but as a ratings tool they could pull off the shelf whenever they needed a boost. They'd write her back into the show, then write her out again, with zero regard for her as a person. The most insulting example. In 2002, after decades in the business, she was exhausted, burnt out. She asked for some time off, a break. A reasonable request, right? How did the show handle it? They just put Laura in a coma, casually. No fanfare, no respect. She was just a light switch they could flick on and off. Meanwhile, her male co-star, Anthony Gary, was constantly praised for his creativity and given the freedom to explore his character. He was treated like an artist. She was treated as disposable. It was a brutal, sexist double standard, and she was living it every single day. Amidst all this professional chaos, she did find some personal stability. In 1988, she married the actor Jonathan Frakes. You probably know him as Commander Riker from Star Trek The Next Generation. They built a real life together, had 2 kids, and she tried to live quietly away from the Hollywood circus. But the circus never left her alone. After her pregnancies, she gained weight. You know, like a normal human being does. But the media treated it like a national crisis. Headlines screamed about her body. She was shamed, mocked, and publicly ridiculed for no longer looking like the 19-year-old girl from the wedding. It was relentless. It was cruel. And it broke her. She sank into a deep depression, needing therapy and medication to cope. She started avoiding public appearances because she was just so tired of being judged, of seeing the disappointment in people's eyes because she wasn't the fantasy they had in their heads. And here's the kicker, the part that really gets me fired up. Her male co-stars, they got to age. They got to have gray hair and wrinkles. They were seen as distinguished. But Genie, she was criticized and condemned for the simple, natural act of getting older. It's a disgusting hypocrisy that still exists in Hollywood today, and she was on the front lines of that battle. Thankfully, her husband, Jonathan, was her rock. He constantly reminded her that her worth wasn't tied to a number on a scale or an old photograph. He told her that only she could decide her own value. And that support was probably what saved her. Over the years, she kept getting pulled back to General Hospital. The fans loved her, they celebrated her comebacks, but behind the scenes, it was often the same old story. Producers would sideline her with weak, uninspired storylines. The harsh scrutiny over her looks never stopped. She once admitted in an interview that she felt like an old product in decline. Think about that. To feel like a used-up product after giving your entire youth to a show. In 2002, it happened again. She was abruptly cut from the show. No goodbye, no recognition. Each time it was a message. You are invisible. You are unwanted. You are replaceable. But Genie Francis is not a victim. She is a survivor. Slowly, painfully, she started to forgive herself. Not for anything she did wrong, but for the crime of not being a teenager forever. She forgave herself for not fitting into the impossible image of young Laura. And in her 50s, something incredible happened. She reclaimed the character. She came back to General Hospital, but this time she reshaped Laura from the inside out. Laura was no longer just America's sweetheart. She became a mature woman, a woman with depth, with wrinkles, with scars, and with an undeniable strength that came from a life fully lived. She was a mother, a mayor, a fighter. She was real. Genie's impact on television is honestly undeniable. She and Anthony Gary created the first ever super couple, a blueprint that soap operas have been copying for decades. But more than that, she redefined how female characters could be loved. She showed that a character could be flawed, could be scarred, could go through hell, and still be the heart of the story. And then in 2018, after more than 40 years in the role, she finally won her first Daytime Emmy for Outstanding Lead Actress. It was a long, long overdue recognition. And in that moment, as she stood on that stage, the audience wasn't just applauding Laura. They were applauding Genie, the woman who gave Laura life, the woman who endured it all. Today, at 62, Genie Francis is finally living life on her own terms. She lives in Maine with her husband, far from the toxic glare of Hollywood. She enjoys the simple things: gardening, reading, spending time with her family. She still returns to General Hospital every now and then, but she